Historical record about the papacy. This is a presentation of the events that took place revolving the papacy in the first few centuries according to historical record. In this historical record, Peter, Linus and Clement died before the end of 1st century. 50 to 60 years after their death, Haggesipus went to Rome and made the most ancient list of popes. His list contained, perhaps, not only the names of bishops but also the duration and years of each pontificate, but has not been preserved in its original. 25 to 30 years after Haggesipus made a list, Irenaeus went to Rome and in his Against Heresies, he accounted the following: the blessed apostles, then, having founded and built up the church, committed into the hands of Linus the office of the episcopate. Of this Linus, Paul makes mention in the epistles to Timothy. To him succeeded Cletus, and after him, in the third place from the apostles, Clement was allotted the bishopric. This man, as he had seen the blessed apostles, and had been conversant with them, might be said to have the preaching of the apostles still echoing in his ears, and their traditions before his eyes. Nor was he alone in this, for there were many still remaining who had received instructions from the apostles. Against Heresies chapter 3, book 3, number 3. But if you notice, he did not mention any dates, nor his account says that their order of bishop was after the death of apostles. Catholic Encyclopedia mentioned that Irenaeus may seem to have used Haggesipus as his source. Tertullian in around 199 AD wrote his prescription against heretics. There he said the following: "For this is the manner in which the apostolic churches transmit their registers, as the church of Smyrna, which records that Polycarp was placed therein by John, as also the church of Rome, which makes Clement to have been ordained in like manner by Peter. In exactly the same way the other churches likewise exhibit their several worthies, who, as having been appointed to their episcopal places by apostles, they regard as transmitters of the apostolic seed." Prescription against heretics. Tertullian, chapter 32. New Advent from also that Tertullian unquestionably places St. Clement after the Apostle Peter, as was also done later by other Latin scholars. But Catholics don't accept Tertullian to be more reliable than Irenaeus. They viewed Irenaeus as having greater claims to historical authority, but actually, they may not be in contradiction. They may actually be accounting for two separate facts that are not contradictory. Remember that Irenaeus in his account did not mention whether the order of bishop he gave was after the death of the apostle. It could be that Irenaeus was accounting for the list of bishops in the order of Linus, Cletus, and Clement. But this was only the list of bishop, not a list of the order of papacy. Meanwhile, Tertullian accounted who took the seat of Peter after his death, which happens to be Clement. Around 60 years after Haggesipus, Julius Africanus, a native of Palestine, composed a chronography in 222 AD that seems to have used Haggesipus as source. According to the Catholic Encyclopedia, Eusebius may have used Julius Africanus as his source, to which Africanus used Haggesipus. In the early 3rd century, a spurious letter claiming to have been written by Clement was produced. In this letter, it was mentioned that shortly before the death of Peter, he appointed Clement as Bishop of Rome and handed over to him the chair, cathedra, of preaching and teaching and the power to bind and loose. Though spurious, it seems to match with Tertullian claims, and when Rufinus wrote his preface on Clementine literature, he reconciled how Linus Cletus was the predecessor of Clement in the list of bishops. But it was Clement who received the keys of Peter. In the same century, around 80 years from Haggesipus, Hippolytus, Bishop of Porto, compiled a chronicle of the world from creation to the year 234 AD. He seems to have used Haggesipus also as his source according to Catholic Encyclopedia. Unfortunately, although a large part of the chronicle has survived, the episcopal list itself, as Hippolytus prepared it, has been lost. However, it was incorporated in later lists known to be the Liberian Catalogue. In this way, The substance of his chronicle has come down to us. In around 4th century, 90 years from Africanus, Eusebius wrote a chronicle and history around 313 and 314 AD. He used Julius Africanus, who seemed to have used Haggesipus' account. But Eusebius corrected the date, which he only copied from Julius Africanus, who copied it also from Haggesipus. Liberian Catalogue in around 350 AD is a collection of chronological and geographical lists and tables compiled for the convenience of Christian residents in Rome. The major part was compounded from several of the previous lists. It has been suggested that it is largely dependent on the work of Bishop Hippolytus of Rome, to which Hippolytus consulted Haggesipus' work. According to Catholic Encyclopedia, the dates given for Linus' pontification were 56 AD until 67 AD, which they viewed to be incorrect. According to Cite, it cannot be doubted that according to the accounts of Irenaeus concerning the Roman Church in the 2nd century, Linus was chosen to be head of the community of Christians in Rome, after the death of the apostle. But if you check Irenaeus' account, as I have mentioned earlier, Irenaeus never did mention that his list of bishop was after the death of Peter. Perhaps this is the reason why the site itself made reservation that they cannot be certain for sure, and I count. For this reason, his pontificate dates from the year of the death of the apostles Peter and Paul, which, however, is not known for certain. Then, in around 380 AD, Jerome produced his chronicle, which according to Catholic Encyclopedia was a translation of Eusebius. So since Eusebius corrected the date in his chronicle would be from Eusebius. This date is after the death of Peter, making Linus the next pope through an election which presumably happened after the death of Peter. But again, Irenaeus, whom Catholics viewed to have more greater historical claims than Tertullian, did not actually mention whether the order of bishop he accounted was after the death of Peter. In around 406 AD, addressed to Gaudentius, Rufinus undertake the translation of Clement Recognitions. In his preface, he mentioned an account of the death of Peter that says Peter has left Clement as his successor, as ruler and teacher of the church, and further incorporates a whole scheme of ecclesiastical government. In this preface, it seems he addressed the seeming contradiction on how then, some men ask, can Clement in his letter to James say that Peter passed over to him his position as a church teacher, when Linus and Cletus were bishops of the city of Rome before Clement? To which he explained. The explanation of this point, as I understand, is as follows. Linus and Cletus were, no doubt, bishops in the city of Rome before Clement, but this was in Peter's lifetime. That is, they took charge of the episcopal work, while he discharged the duties of the apostolate. He is known to have done the same thing at Caesarea, for there, though he was himself on the spot, yet he had at his side Zacchaeus, whom he had ordained as bishop. Thus we may see how both things may be true, namely how they stand as predecessors of Clement in the list of bishops, and that how Clement after the death of Peter became his successor in the teacher's chair. But according to Catholic Encyclopedia, the hypothesis of Rufinus has no historical foundation, or is it? Perhaps Catholic's Encyclopedia said this because their underlying presumption of Irenaeus' account of the order of bishop was after the death of the apostle. But again, nowhere did Irenaeus mention that the order of bishop he accounted for was after the death of Peter. It could be that Linus, Cletus, and Clement was bishop in the lifetime of Peter, and he was accounting only their bishophood, not the papacy. And Clement, though last to be ordained as bishop by Peter, he was the one who succeeded the seat of Peter. 2 to 3 centuries later, the Liberian Catalogue was transported outright into Liber Pontificalis to form the groundwork for the period it covered. The author of Liber Pontificalis was content to take it as it stood, without troubling to go behind to any of the more primitive lists. In Liber Pontificalis, the date of Linus' bishophood was from the time of Nero, from the consulship of Saturninus and Scipio, 56 AD, until the year 1 Capito and Rufus were consuls, 67 AD, which was copied from the Liberian Catalogue. These dates do not seat well with the Catholic tradition. Hence they viewed these dates to be incorrect, since it would imply that Linus was indeed a bishop in the lifetime of Peter, which makes Linus not a pope during this period. So in summary, we can infer the following. 1. None of those who made an episcopal list in Rome for the 1st century was an eyewitness. The Haggesipus list was 50 to 60 years after the death of Clement. His list may have been used by Irenaeus, by Africanus, by Hippolytus. 2. Irenaeus' account on the list of bishops did not mention the dates of the episcopate, nor did it say that Linus, Cletus, and Clement took the office of episcopate after the death of Peter. The office of episcopate is an office of bishop, and being a bishop do not automatically refers to papacy. 3. Tertullian's account that Clement was the one who succeeded Peter may not be in contradiction with Irenaeus' account, since it could be that Irenaeus was only accounting for their order of bishophood, not their order of papacy, while Tertullian accounted who succeeded the seat of Peter in the person of Clement by appointment. 4. In Eusebius' time, which was in the 4th century, it was already in practice that the papacy was obtained by election, not through direct appointment from the predecessor. And because this was the current setting, it must be that Linus' papacy must come after the death of Peter. Hence, Eusebius corrected the dates of his source. If he agrees with Tertullian's account, it would not be in line with the current practice in his time, since Tertullian was suggesting a direct appointment. Perhaps this was the reason why they don't view Tertullian as having an equal historical claim compared to Irenaeus. 5. The original dates which Eusebius corrected may have come down to us through Hippolytus, who the same with Africanus used Haggesipus. Although Hippolytus' original episcopal list is lost, it was transcribed in Liberian Catalogue, which in turn copied into Liber Pontificalis. This date of Linus' pontification proves that he was indeed a bishop in the lifetime of Peter, but these dates are unacceptable for Catholics. 6. Rufinus' hypothesis that reconciles the account of Irenaeus and Tertullian is highly plausible, since Irenaeus did not actually mention whether Linus, Cletus, and Clement became bishop after the death of Peter. 7. And lastly, the historical evidence makes the Catholic apostolic succession in the 1st century highly questionable and highly doubtful. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe and share.